Imagine being an animal so vile and wild. Not only did you traumatize a researcher, everything he learned about you had to be hidden from the public for almost 100 years. That's what happened to George Murray Levick. He was on an expedition in 1911 when he ran into a group of Adelie penguins. It was the largest colony on Earth, and since nobody had ever spent a whole breeding cycle there, George decided to be first. Oh, he f***ed around, and he spent 3 months finding out. What he found out was Adelie penguins are 50 shades of foul play. No pun intended, maybe. He watched the male penguins attempt to mate with literally anything, including other males, injured females, and even unsupervised penguin chicks. Nah, but what really messed him up was watching a male score with a past tense, past expiration date female. Apparently penguins aren't above self-service, because he also witnessed one male get it on with an extra curvy piece of snowdrift. To completion. He was so appalled he referred to them as hooligan cocks. And remember, this was 1911, that had to be some kind of slur. George quickly realized that if male penguins understand consent, they could not care less about it, because he reportedly watched one female that was too injured to walk try to crawl away, only for 2 hooligans to catch up to her and demoralize both her and George. I don't even know why he did this, because like, what more do you have to prove? But at one point he did an experiment where he took the frozen decapitated head of a penguin and put it on a pile of snow just to see how low the flightless felons could go. The answer was low enough. George put every messed up thing he learned in a manuscript, and the British Museum of Natural History decided history was exactly what his studies would be when they vaulted it, until it was rediscovered almost 100 years later in 2012. All that trauma, and he didn't even live to see it get published. But the worst part, these are Adelie penguins. Yep, it all adds up in the end.
Nearly 58 years later, police solved the cold case murder of a 9-year-old Hazleton girl. On March the 18th, 1964, Maurice Chivarella left her home to go to school. She was described as a quiet, sweet girl, and she wanted to be a nun when she grew up. Witnesses reported last seeing her at 8:10 a.m, and this is the last time they would see this little girl alive. Heartbreakingly, at around 1 p.m, her body was discovered in a coal pit. The autopsy showed that she had been SA'd and then killed. She'd been dumped in the pit along with some of her belongings. This case went cold until 2007, when DNA was collected using fluid that had been left on the victim's jacket. Disappointingly, at the time, the DNA returned no matches. In 2019, though, thanks to advances in technology, the DNA profile was uploaded to a genealogical database. Finally, the DNA had a match. Shockingly, it was found to be a very distant relative, possibly a 6th cousin. In 2020, researchers managed to get most of the victim's family to cooperate and give DNA samples. The investigation found that James Fort was the suspect. He was 22 at the time of the little girl's killing. Now, he actually died in 1980 due to natural causes. However, his body was exhumed to confirm whether he was responsible for her murder. On February the 3rd, the test confirmed that his DNA was a match. This is the oldest cold case in Pennsylvania to be solved using genetic genealogy.
This is Javid Ikbal, who is also known as Kukri, and is one of Pakistan's worst serial killers of all time. Not much is known about his early life, but he was the 6th child of a well-off trader. He started his own business in 1978 while he was still attending college. At some point, his father had purchased 2 villas and allowed him to set up a steel recasting business inside of one of them. In December of 1999, he sent a very disturbing letter to police and local newspapers, confessing to the murders of 100 boys between the ages of 6 and 16. In his letters, he claimed that there were runaways and orphans that were living on the streets. He went into gruesome detail that he strangled them, dismembered them, dissolved them in acid, and then disposed of the remains in the river. When police searched his home, it was a blood-stained mess. They recovered the chain that he used to strangle the boys, as well as 2 vats of acid that still had bodies in them. He said in his letter that he planned to drown himself in the river, but after police combed the entire thing, they never found him. He actually ended up turning himself into the newspaper instead of the police, fearing that they would kill him. They also recovered a diary that went into grisly detail of each of his murders. He also had 3 teenage accomplices which were also arrested. Despite his confession, in court he claimed that he was innocent and the whole thing was an elaborate hoax. Over 100 witnesses showed up to the court case to testify against him and his accomplices. The judge sentenced Ikbal to die by strangulation, be dismembered into 100 pieces, and dissolved in acid, under the legal concept an eye for an eye. Although the judge sentenced him to be executed this way, it would go against the Islamic teaching of respect for the body of the deceased. On October 8th, 2001, Ikbal and his accomplice Saeed were found dead in their prison cell. They apparently ended their own lives by hanging themselves with their bed sheets, but it is speculated that they were maybe murdered.
So there's two types of people, the ones that see this polar bear hyping himself up before taking a cold plunge the way we all have at one point, we've all done this, and then the ones that say it's zoochosis. And I'm not about to plant my flag one way or another, but I am going to tell you the story of Gus. Zoochosis is what can happen to an animal in captivity without proper enrichment. Eventually they develop psychosis, and one of the biggest tells is doing the same thing over and over all day, every single day. Now this is Gus. Gus was a polar bear who lived in a Central Park Zoo for 25 years. Eventually people noticed Gus swimming in the same exact figure 8 direction every day for sometimes up to 12 hours straight. So what did a zoo do? Well, other than spend $25,000 in therapy that amounts to a guy pretty much saying, that's crazy, it really be like that. Gus became the first zoo animal to ever be put on Prozac. Yeah, and they got him a jacuzzi too. Eventually the figure 8 slowed down, but they never completely stopped. Also, y'all wanna see something crazy? I'm gonna just go ahead and get this out the way. Damn. But yeah, apparently I saw Gus as a kid and didn't realize it until years later. I'm glad I did because he passed away in 2013 after his partners Ida and Lily, and since then Central Park retired polar bears and replaced them with grizzlies. This isn't an anti-zoo video. I think zoos come with a lot of good and a lot of bad. It's just that in this case the bad led to a chronically pilled out polar bear.
This volunteer at a church tried to sell a teenager on the dark web. This is Kelly Garrett Ivy from Central Georgia. And last June is when these crimes occurred. So Kelly was a part of a dark web website called Slave Bay. The website on the dark web sold slaves themselves, or people that had been abducted into slavery. And the website also sold personal information of people. Basically, if people had information about where a vulnerable young man or woman lived, yes, even children were up for grabs, they would attempt to sell the information about places they frequented, what times they were usually alone, and obviously stuff like their phone number and home address. Well, at some point, Kelly, while attending the church that he volunteered at, came across a 16-year-old girl that he befriended. Just to talk about this website one more time, this is just one of the more disturbing corners of the dark web. The dark web is a place where anything can be purchased, CP, CSAM, different things like narcotics, and apparently even slaves and humans. So I don't know exactly how investigators tracked Kelly down or discovered that he was the one that was trying to sell a 16-year-old girl on the internet. But they eventually did. They got their arrest warrant, they took him in, and he's been in prison since. That's because, thankfully, they denied his bond, so he's had to sit in prison until his hearing. And based on the charges that this guy has stacked against him, hopefully he'll be in there for a very, very long time.
So this photo is the reason you shouldn't put your feet up on the dashboard of a car. In 2007, Granny Keeley had an airbag deploy on her at 120 miles an hour. She was sitting passenger with her feet up on the dash, and when the airbag went off, her knees went right into her skull. Obviously, this led to a brain injury. Her 2 front teeth also fell out, but she lived, thankfully. She lived without a forehead for about 2 years until surgeons fitted a ceramic forehead into her skull. She had near constant headaches, and she developed gallstones because of the medication she was on. After they fitted a ceramic plate into her forehead, they injected fat from her stomach into it so it could look more natural. This is her today, so she looks very normal now. And of course, because she's in good spirit, she says her ceramic forehead is designer because it was made in Italy. She also spent a considerable amount of time educating people on why they shouldn't put their feet up on the dashboard. Because if you do, you could end up like this. And you might not be so lucky. So, if you get anything from this video, stop putting your feet up on the dash. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section below, and as always, these videos are for informational and entertainment purposes only.
Okay, everyone needs to hear about this because it's actually wild. This is what was advertised and this is what people turned up to. An immersive Wonka experience based on the film was advertised using AI-generated images in Glasgow, Scotland, and promised to be a journey filled with wondrous creations and enchanting surprises at every turn. I mean, I don't even know what part of the movie this is, but this was one of their enchanting surprises. They even just slapped one of their AI-generated images on the wall. The organizers said the experience would last between 45 minutes and an hour, but it actually took visitors once they arrived only 5 minutes to walk through the entire thing. And I don't even know what the hell those Oompa Loompas are cooking up, but it doesn't look legal. Eventually, the police had to be called halfway through its first day after furious families who paid £35 per person, and some drove hours to get there, started demanding refunds. I mean, I don't know if it's just me, but Why do I really want to go?
The dad who had the sleepover for his 12-year-old daughter and spiked the smoothies, there's been new details released. So the girl who managed to get away and get help for the rest of the girls says that they all knew something was going on. They all were scared. He would do things like come into the room and separate them. She said she would hug up to one girl who was scared while the other girl was just passed out. And he would come in and he would separate them. So I guess they were asleep, but they were still like hugged up. And she texted this to the family member who did come and get her. She said, he keeps moving us and my other friend won't wake up. She woke up for 2 seconds but did not open her eyes. When the family member came to get her, the girl was approached by this man who slurred his words and seemed drunk, but he didn't stop her from leaving. And they then went to her house to wake up her parents, and her parents went to his house, which he didn't want to open the doors, and got the other girls and took them to their parents. Now, when they made it home to their parents, one girl's mom says she had to be carried in because she was completely out of it, and the other girl's mom says she had to have help getting into the house because she couldn't walk on her own. So when they get everybody to the hospital, one girl says she don't remember nothing. She had completely blacked out, and the other girl was still slurring her words and felt woozy. Now, his wife at the time is Japanese. She didn't speak good English. He's the one that conducted everything. I don't know if the wife is the mother of his daughter who he did the sleepover for, but it says that that's the reason why he conducted everything, because she didn't speak that good of English, but now they're divorced. I can only imagine what would have happened had they not got themselves out of that situation.
Don't log into Facebook right now. So this is happening right now, but there's been a massive, what seems to be hack across all of Facebook. I even went to go verify on my own Facebook, and yes, I was logged out. Now, I've seen a lot of different people saying, do not log in right now. This is a massive hack and you don't want your information exposed. But it's definitely scary to see how vulnerable social media sites like Facebook are nowadays. And don't even think about going to Instagram. As you know, Instagram and Facebook are owned by the same company. And I went to go check on my own Instagram, and yes, it couldn't load any of my posts, so Instagram seems to be down as well. All you have to do is go to the website Down Detector, and you can see that there's been a massive spike of error reports at Facebook in the last hour. And in the comment section on that website, thousands of people from across the world are saying they don't have access to Facebook. Now, I'm not trying to say here that you can't live life without Facebook, obviously. I'm trying to say that this is dangerous. I mean, there's so much personal information that a person has on Facebook or social media networks like this today. And if hackers really did manage to get into the mainframe of Facebook, who knows what they took or why they took it or why they're hacking. So yeah, I guess I'll post an update when we find out more about this, but I would just stay as far away from those two websites as you can right now.
5 years ago, this MIT student created a device that allows you to have the entire internet in your head. But today, he's nowhere to be found. A year before Elon Musk's Neuralink was even founded, Arnav Kapoor was building a non-invasive wearable device that essentially acts as a Google search for your brain. In an interview he did with 60 Minutes, for example, he was asked what's the largest city in Bulgaria and what's its population. He then proceeds to silently ask the computer, and then hears the answer through vibrations transmitted through his skull and into his inner ear.
Sophia, 1.21 million?
That is correct.
This device went on to be a sensation. He was invited to do a TED Talk, dozens of interviews, and it even won awards at MIT. But the strange part is that despite this happening 5 years ago, and arguably the fastest 5 years of growth for AI tech, the alter ego device, or Arnav, are nowhere to be found. He has not been active on Twitter, Instagram, or LinkedIn, and the most recent interview I could find was about a month ago, but it doesn't include any information about where he or his device is now. However, in the meantime, Neuralink has been FDA approved, successfully implanted into the first human patient, and they are now able to control a computer mouse with their thoughts. I've reached out to him via email asking why his device hasn't progressed, but no reply yet. So the question is, would you rather a device that's removable but can be seen, or one that's invisible but is implanted into your brain?
This happened this year. You're not even gonna believe this, bro. This girl, I think she just graduated college. Out of college, she was gonna be working at Microsoft soon.
Damn, that's crazy.
Right? So her life was looking hella good. She ends up taking a trip with one of her homegirls to Germany. So they go to Germany and they're just going out there, you know, just as tourists and just to see what's good with everything. This guy, random German dude that's out there, dude's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, but I mean, I know like everywhere out here, you know what I mean? Like if you guys want to see like a cool spot, and they're like, oh, okay, like let's go see what's good with it. He takes the girls to this like bridge, right? And they're just like kind of looking at the stuff, everything like that. While they're all just chilling, looking at the site, he tries to SA the girl, the 21-year-old, because it's her and her friend. Her friend's 22. Her homegirl is like grabbing the and like hitting him and trying to stop him and stuff. He's getting so frustrated of like, like she's not letting me do it. He throws both of these girls off the bridge, a 615-foot cliff, bro. Off of, and I'm telling you right now, bro, the craziest shit.
So it's now been confirmed that Madeline's mother's boyfriend had been assaulting Madeline for 2 years since she was the age of 11. And again, I'm not here to attack the mother or accuse her of any crime. I don't know. Again, like I said before, I do feel that something about her is off. Her behavior is suspicious. As a person who unfortunately experienced abuse as a child, there are always indicators. It is extremely unlikely that this had been going on for 2 years and the mother is absolutely clueless. There are indicators of how the child behaves when the person who assaults is present or anything like that. So again, this further makes it look like the mother is hiding something, or that something was brought to her attention and was ignored, or something like that. It's just giving that this is something's off there. I still believe very strongly that the mother is hiding something that she knows, and I believe that it's about to come out. I believe that they are investigating and it is going to be revealed, because they're going to leave no stone unturned.
This guy is one of the worst pedophiles in world history, and this video is really gonna piss you off. So this is Sun Jung-woo. He's from South Korea. And yes, his identity has been purposefully concealed by the South Korean government. So when Sun Jung-woo was captured in 2018, he was running one of the largest pedophile websites in the world. The website was called Welcome to Video. At the time that the website was shut down, it had 1.2 million pedophile members around the world. Authorities also estimated there were 360,000 downloads of CP or CSAM material from this website. Authorities also estimated that about 46% of the stuff they saw on that website they had never seen before, meaning that this guy and all of his pedophile buddies were producing this stuff exclusively. So while he ran this website, 220,000 downloads of CP and CSAM were made. And Sun Jung-woo became rich. He made over $300,000 on this disgusting stuff. But after he was tried and convicted, he was sentenced to an extremely long sentence of a little over 2 years in prison. 2 years, 220,000 CP and CSAM downloads. A pedophile website with 1.2 million members, 2.5 almost years. He was also sentenced to another 1.5 years for some other charges, and ultimately his final sentencing added 24 months to his prison sentence because he was money laundering. So that means that this guy got less than 10 years in prison for running a pedophile website with 1.2 million members. Plus, the government has gone out of their way to protect this pedophile's identity. I mean, I literally have no words after reading about this case. I cannot believe that this is actually our reality. There are people in America serving such longer charges for drug-related crimes than this hardcore pedophile is. Oh yeah, and the United States tried to have him extradited to the US so he could face charges here and spend a significantly longer amount of time in prison, but the South Korean government denied it.
This young man was folded and stuck in a chimney, and this is one of the worst deaths imaginable explained. On May 8th, 2008 in Colorado, 18-year-old Joshua Maddox, On this day, he went for a walk, and walking through the woods was one of his favorite things to do. Except this time, he would sadly never come home, and nobody would ever see him alive again. The family filed a missing persons report, but given that he was 18 and a very adventurous person, they thought it was highly possible that he could have just picked up all of his things and moved. But it would have been very out of character for him to just leave and not say anything to his family. Fast forward 7 years later to August 2015. A property manager named Chuck Murphy was beginning the demolishing process of some cabins, and they have been abandoned for at least a decade. They were in the process of demolishing a chimney in one of the cabins, and they would find something truly disturbing that they never would have expected. Inside the chimney was a mummified human body. Dental records would then confirm that it was sadly the body of Joshua Maddox. The cabin was only a mile or two from where he lived, but this is where the story gets extremely weird. Josh was naked from the waist down and had a thin thermal shirt on, but absolutely nothing else. He was found upside down in a fetal position, his legs were above his head, and he was virtually folded in half. Based on the position he was in, they speculated that he had to go in from the top of the chimney head first. But why in the hell would anybody go into a chimney head first? Also, the chimney had a wired mesh top. Now, it was already demolished by the time they discovered the body, but the contractor swears it was there. So, how in the world did Josh get in from the top? Also, his clothes, the rest of them, were folded very neatly inside of the cabin next to the chimney, suggesting that he was already in the cabin, so what was his cause of death? They can't say for sure, but he had no physical trauma to his body at all. The coroner also said that he was likely in the chimney in that position for at least a couple of days, completely alive, and he would have either died from dehydration, which could have taken up to a week, or possibly, but likely, hypothermia, which could have taken a couple of days. Another theory, witnesses claim they saw him with a man named Andrew Newman before his disappearance, and a man who is now in prison for murder. But how would one person get Josh halfway up a chimney? Again, there was no physical trauma at all, and why was he half naked? This case is absolutely mind-blowing, and what the hell happened to Joshua Maddox?